Excuse me. Okay, so let me pick it up. Revelation chapter 17. I'll read verses 7 through 10. Then the angel said to me, "Why are you astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast which you saw once was, now is not, and will come out of the abyss and go to his destruction. The inhabitants of the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world, will be astonished when they see the beast, because he once was, now is not, and yet will come. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. They are also 7 kings." Okay, so let's just quickly review what we talked about last time. We began chapter 17, and I told you that in chapter 17 and 18, we are basically going back in time. We're going back to the beginning, the middle, sort of the tribulation period, the last 7 years of human history as we know it. Chapter 17 is going to deal with the destruction of the great satanic one-world religion that will be in play at that time. Chapter 18 is going to focus more upon the destruction of the economic, political, and military establishment of the Antichrist. We also learned last week that the primary symbols in the Bible for unfaithfulness to God are all sexual immoral symbols, right? Adultery, prostitution, fornication, harlotry. Those are the symbols that we find, especially in the Old Testament, of Israel, of individuals when they are unfaithful to God. We also learned that this final satanic one-world religion is really the culmination of all of the idolatry, all of the false religions that have been on planet Earth since the time of the Tower of Babel, which is really where it all began, which is really where we get this idea of the city of Babylon. Okay, and you remember that the great name that's on this woman riding the beast is Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. Ultimately, Satan is behind all of this, and we found out that she is, of course, drunk with the blood of the saints, so that Satan is really the murderer behind all of the martyrs. Okay, with that, let's move on now to verse 7. Then the angel said to me, "Why are you astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has 7 heads and 10 horns." Now, if you recall, we left off last time, and I said, it says John was astonished, and I said, if we had a vision like this, we would probably be astonished or surprised by that vision. What's happening here, though, is the angel is now addressing really something different. The angel is addressing John's bewilderment, his confusion, his lack of understanding of what this vision is all about, which is really what we're going to talk about this morning. In other words, and your first question is, what does the angel's question refer to? It refers to the relationship between the woman and the beast. Okay? Exactly what is that relationship? Okay? What is the relationship between that one final satanic one-world religion and the kingdom of the Antichrist? It's almost, if you will, John is asking, well, I thought that there was just one world kingdom of the Antichrist at the end time, and now you're telling me, well, yeah, but there's also this other thing that kind of runs parallel to it, and it's the religious system. So what's going on here? And I think as we read Revelations, that's certainly one of the questions that we probably have. And so that's what we're going to talk about, continue to talk about this morning. So let's see what we can find out here. Look at verse 8. "The beast you saw once was, now is not, and will come out of the abyss, will come up out of the abyss to go to his destruction." Now, in order to understand this, you have to go back to chapter 13. So go back to chapter 13, verses 3 and 4. By the time we get to this part of Revelation, we've really already talked about all of these things, okay? We're just putting a little bit more meat on the bones. But listen to what Revelation 13, verses 3 and 4 says. "One of the heads of the beast seemed to have a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole earth was filled with wonder and followed the beast. People worshiped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast, and they also worshiped the beast and asked, 'Who is like the beast? Who can wage war against it?'" Now, if you recall, when we went through this verse, we realized that the beast is the Antichrist. And when he's first introduced, what we find out is that one of his heads is going to have a fatal wound, and he is going to be healed. And the healing of that wound is going to cause the whole world to be amazed after the beast. That is the Antichrist. They're going to worship the dragon, who is Satan, and they're ultimately going to worship the beast, who is the Antichrist. Now, if you jump down to verse 12, you'll find that we're introduced to the false prophet. He is going to exercise all of the authority of the first beast, which is the Antichrist, and he's going to make the whole world, all the people who dwell on the earth, worship the first beast, the Antichrist. And again, it says, whose fatal wound is healed. So the false prophet also performs great signs and wonders to convince the people of the world to do what he says. And what is he saying? To set up an idol to the Antichrist and to worship the Antichrist as God. So here's what we have in an overview. We have the beast, the Antichrist, who was, he was alive, okay? Then who is not, he died, but he's going to come again. He's going to be resurrected. So Revelations chapter 7, verse 8 is really referring to the Antichrist and his fake resurrection. That's your second question. It's referring to the fake resurrection of the Antichrist. And again, remember when we talked about Revelations chapter 13, I told you that it referred to the fake resurrection. And one of the points we made, and I want to make it again because it's important, is that Satan is always trying to imitate God. Question number 3, what does Satan always try to do? He always tries to imitate God, okay? So, God's Christ was resurrected, that's Jesus. Guess what? Satan's Christ will also be resurrected. That's the Antichrist, okay? Of course, the only difference is God's resurrection of Jesus was real. Satan's resurrection of the Antichrist is going to be a fake. Now, again, why all of this deception? Well, think about it, folks. The Antichrist is going to need this fake resurrection to be catapulted into the category, if you will, of deity. Okay? Question number 4. What does the Antichrist need the fake resurrection? Or why does he need the fake resurrection? All right? Here you have the greatest leader the world has ever known. Imagine this, the most charismatic leader the world has ever known. And he's assassinated at the height of his power. What do you think the world is going to do? They're just going to be so depressed. They're going to be crying in the streets. We kind of see that now, right? When a great world leader dies, or even if they're assassinated. Here, it's going to be so unbelievable. But then guess what? He's going to come back to life. What do you think the response is going to be? Let's make him a god. Let's make him a god. That's what's going on here, okay? So let me just review all of this again, all right? For the first 3.5 years of the 7 years of the tribulation period, you have this one world religion developing, okay? It either will be in place or it will be developing, okay? And this is developing as the Antichrist is rising up to power. Remember, when the Antichrist first shows up on the scene, what is he hailed as? Do you remember? He's riding a white horse, right? He's a great peacemaker. Your question number 5. Okay, the answer is he's a great peacemaker when he shows up on the world stage. Remember, he's riding a white horse, the first seal, and he's got a bow, which signifies conquest, but he doesn't have any arrows, so he's not doing it militarily. He's doing it through political alliances. He's doing it peacefully. He's doing it with his charisma. He's doing it by bringing people together. I would imagine he's finally going to solve the Arab-Israeli conflict. Just think of how the world is going to view somebody that's capable of doing that, okay? The greatest leader we've ever known, politically, economically, militarily, the most gifted human being who has ever lived, of course, outside of Jesus, but this individual is going to be the most gifted human being who has ever walked the face of this earth. And what he's going to do is, as he's rising to power, he is going to ally himself with the false prophet and with this one world religion that is also developing. They're going to support each other. That's what it means when it says that this woman, this prostitute, this harlot is riding the beast, okay? And then together, he and the false prophet are going to fake his resurrection. The false prophet is going to be involved in that. And he is going to be raised to the level of deity, okay? Now, look at again verse 8. It says, the beast which you saw once was, now is not, and will come up out of the abyss and go to his destruction. And again, we've already talked about this. But this is a very, very important point. After he comes up, or this fake resurrection takes place, he is going to be fully demon-possessed, all right? It's not going to just be a human being anymore, all right? He is going to be fully demon-possessed. That's what it means when it says, we'll come up out of the abyss. What is the abyss? The abyss is the place of demons. And so this powerful demon is going to indwell in this person who was this great leader. Okay, so question number 6. What does verse 8 mean when it says that the beast will come out of the abyss? There's going to be a powerful demon who is going to indwell in this individual. Some people go so far as to say it's the same demon who indwelled in Alexander the Great. We don't have time to go down that road, but if you want to look at somebody's rise to power and an absolute, genius at conquest, you can't do better than Alexander the Great. He also died when he was very, very young, okay? So both chapters 13 and chapter 17 in the book of Revelation are talking about this amazing event that takes place, okay? Now, just remember, when we talk about the beast and the heads and the Antichrist, we're talking not only about an individual, we're also talking about his kingdom, okay? So all of this fabrication is going to say that he is going to be at the height of his power when all of this takes place. Now, just to give you a little preview of where we're headed, jump down to verse 16 in chapter 17. Look what it says here. The beast and the 10 horns that you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Now, we're going to talk more about this, but here's what's going to happen, all right? As this one world religion is developing side by side with the Antichrist, after his fake resurrection and he becomes fully demon-possessed, okay, he is going to, in a sense, destroy the one world religion because he is going to put himself in the place of whatever god or gods the one world religion may be worshiping. And this is, you recall, remember we talked about this, he's going to go to the temple in Jerusalem and he's going to desecrate the temple. Okay, that's the abomination that causes desolation that both Daniel and Jesus himself spoke about. And that happens right around the midpoint of the tribulation period. So he's going to have this one world religion. He's just going to replace the god or gods that they're worshiping with himself. So emperor worship, in a sense, is going to come back to planet Earth. All right, now let's continue with verse 8. The inhabitants of the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world will be astonished when they see the beast, because he once was, now is not, and yet will come. Again, you cannot overestimate the influence that this event, this fake resurrection, is going to have, okay? And let's just take a look at this now. Notice how unbelievers are described here. Very interesting description. They're described as those whose names have not been written in the book of life. Question number 7. How are they described? They have not had their names written in the book of life. Every other instance where you have reference to the book of life, it always says the people whose names have been written in the book of life, right? So here it's a negative. Now, among other things, let me just point out to you, when are their names written in the book of life? What does it say? Before the creation of the world. Before you and I have anything to do, good, bad, or indifferent. Before we can do anything, when are our names written? Then. That's divine election. That's what this is an example of, divine election. God is making the decision on who's going to be saved. There's clear proof. You're saved before the creation of the world. You don't have any influence on that. You're not saved because you're a good person. You're saved because God has elected you. And once you realize that, then you should become a good person, right? Then you should live a life pleasing to the Lord because you're grateful for what he has done to you, all right? So before the foundation of the world, these people have been chosen by Almighty God. Now, notice, why are they astonished by the beast? Again, because he once was, now is not, and yet will come. So again, this fake resurrection is the pivotal moment in the tribulation period. Now, let's just think about this, okay? Okay, because it's very important. Isn't that exactly why we worship Jesus Christ? I want you to appreciate what's going on here. Why do you worship Jesus Christ as the second person of the Trinity? Why do we worship Jesus Christ as God incarnate? Isn't it because he was resurrected? I mean, isn't it because of Easter? You wouldn't celebrate Christmas if you didn't celebrate Easter. Easter's more important than Christmas, folks. If Jesus Christ is not resurrected, then there's no need to have Christmas, right? That's exactly what Satan is going to do. He's going to say, wait a minute, there used to be this world religion many years ago. I think it was called Christianity, and they were worshiping this guy that they thought was resurrected. But that was a long time ago, and that wasn't true. We all know that. But look at this. This has happened right now. He's been resurrected. He must be God. That's exactly what is going to happen here. Now, I just want to make a couple of points on this, because this is really how we bring this revelation to our lives today. You must appreciate the fact that Satan always wants to imitate God, but his imitations are without substance. His imitations are fake. His imitations are just a bunch of lies. They're deceptive. They're empty. What I mean is, did the Antichrist live a perfect life? Did the Antichrist die on the cross for the sins of the world? No, it's a fake. He doesn't do anything like that. He's not even resurrected, okay? Because he won't really die. He wants all the glory of a resurrection, but he's not willing to pay the price for a resurrection, all right? And that's what we have to understand. Satan always tempts us with the temporal, with the here and now, with the immediate. Do it right now. If it feels nice, don't think twice, right? That's what Satan is trying to do, and they're all a bunch of lies. He tempts us with the easy way out. Isn't that what, for example, affairs are all about? I'm going to have an affair with a woman. I'm going to take something that I shouldn't be taking. I'm going to have access to some joys that I shouldn't be having. What about abusing drugs and alcohol? It's the same kind of thing. It's temporal. Do it now. Don't worry about the consequences. Don't worry about the consequences. That's what Satan always tries to tempt us with. And that's what we have to understand, because at the end time, that's what's going to happen. That's not how God works, okay? God cares about doing what is right, doing what is good, doing what is godly, even if we have to suffer immediately in this world. We still are supposed to do what is right, what is good. And what about Jesus? I mean, he lives a perfect life. You know, Satan tempts him, right? Be my Christ instead of God's Christ. What will I do? I'll give you the whole world. I'll give you all the kingdoms of the world. Christ could have had all that if he wanted to, but he chose the path of what? The cross, so that God the Father could punish him in our place, okay? You know, the Antichrist wants the resurrection and the claim to be deity without paying the price for it. And Jesus Christ was resurrected, is deity, and he also paid the price for it. Do you understand what I'm getting at here? Because this is something that helps us right now in our lives. This is how the book of Revelation chapter 17 intersects with our lives today. It's not just about the future. It's about how we live our lives right now, okay? Now we get more insight into this, and we're going to end with this. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. They are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and another is yet to come. But when he does come, he must remain for a little while. The beast who once was, and now is not, is an 8th king. He belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. Now, you read this, it's kind of confusing. We're going to talk about this in greater depth next week. But I just want to make a quick point here as we end. Well, maybe not so quick, but as we end, okay? As soon as you hear about the city on 7 hills, everybody says, oh, that's got to refer to Rome, or it's got to refer to the Roman Catholic Church, and the Pope is the Antichrist, etc., etc. I don't personally think that's the best interpretation of this, okay? If you want to believe that, that's fine. I'll still love you. You know, if you accept Jesus, you'll still go to heaven. So we're not talking about anything that's going to affect our salvation. But I just want to take you through some things as we look at a passage like this and we try to interpret it, okay? First thing you want to do is, what are the things that we already know? Well, first of all, we already know that the woman is the satanic one-world religion. So question number 9, who's the woman? The woman is the satanic one-world religious system. Okay, that's who the woman is. We know that, all right? What about the 7 heads? Who are the 7 heads? Well, we already have talked about that in great detail. They're the 7 world empires that have been developed by Satan. So it's Egypt. You don't have to write this down. Just say the 7 world empires of Satan. But just to review, okay, it's Egypt, Assyria, Babylon. After Babylon came Persia. Then we had Greece, Rome, and at the end we're going to have the revived Roman Empire of the Antichrist. So the 7 hills have to be related to all of these empires, and certainly the Roman Empire, Rome as a city is one of them, but it's not related necessarily to all of these world empires. The third point I want to make is verse 10 tells us, your question number 11, what does verse 10 tell us about the hills? They're also kings. Well, presumably, they're the main king of all of these empires. So in Egypt, we would have Pharaoh. In Assyria, we would have a fellow by the name of Tiglath-Pileser III, who was their great emperor. In Babylon, of course, it's Nebuchadnezzar. In Persia, it's Cyrus. In Greece, it's going to be Alexander. In Rome, it's going to be Caesar. You know, which one? I don't know. Pick one. You know, probably Julius Caesar, I would imagine, or maybe Augustus. And then at the end, in the revived Roman Empire, it's going to be the Antichrist, all right? So again, it's hard to see how these 7 hills are just speaking about only one. In the case of most people, it would be Rome. But my fourth point, your question number 12, and this is very interesting. The word that's translated as hills is the Greek word ore, okay, O-R-E, all right? That's used 7 other times in the book of Revelation. And it's always interpreted as mountains. It's always interpreted as mountains. For example, Revelation 6, verse 14, Revelations 8, verse 8. And if you look at the Bible, the whole Bible, mountains are oftentimes a symbol for a world power. And you can look at Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2, Jeremiah 51:25, Daniel 2, verse 35, just to give you an example. So if that's the case, why is this translated hills? Well, I think it's the prejudice of the translators. Why? Because most people would think, well, the 7 hills, the city on the 7 hills, has got to be Rome. It really should be translated, the city on 7 mountains. The city on 7 mountains, okay? The next point I want to make is this, all right? If this city on 7 hills is Rome, which everybody, first comes to your mind, well, what's the need for divine wisdom? Look at what John says in verse 9. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. If it's clearly Rome, I mean, that doesn't take any biblical wisdom to know that, right? Everybody automatically assumes that it's Rome. But the fact of the matter is, in the Bible, when wisdom is necessary, or when wisdom, biblical wisdom usually means is theological and symbolic discernment. Your question number 13, what does biblical wisdom usually mean? It means some kind of spiritual discernment. Well, what do I need that for if every Tom, Dick, or Harry knows, well, the city on 7 hills is Rome, okay? So anyway, to just kind of end this, I think what is being referred to here is simply the 7 world empires of Satan, just like he's said many different ways. Now he's giving us yet another image. These 7 mountains on which the woman sits are the 7 world empires that she has always sat on throughout the history of the world, okay? What do the hills represent? They represent the 7 world empires. And we know that this false religion has been based upon, or been in cahoots with, or has been supported by all of these other empires that Satan has developed. If you jump down to verse 18 real quick, it says, "The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth." Now again, let me just tie a loose end up here and then we'll be done. The great city here is the city of Babylon, but not in the physical, literal sense of a city on planet Earth. We talked last week about that crown that she's wearing, right? And it says, "Mystery Babylon the Great." That refers to all of these satanic religions, all of the idolatry that has been going on planet Earth since the fall of Babylon. So this cannot be referring to a literal physical city. No one city on planet Earth has ever had dominance over all the kings of the world. You know, when Babylon was in power, or Persia was in power, or Egypt, or Rome, or Greece, they all had their own capital cities. They didn't just have the same capital city, okay? So to end, I think the city refers to the great harlot, which is the city of Babylon. So the next part here, we're going to have to, again, go with a fine-tooth comb. I hope you're not getting, not interested in this because it is a little detailed. I apologize for that, but there's just nothing I can do. We've got to go through this word by word, line by line, because I think there's a lot to be learned here. So I hope that this is profitable for you, even though it may get a little tedious and a little detailed. Amen? Let's